We never know as clearly as much as what the president's doing, unless you're working directly with him. But I think it's pretty clear what's going to happen. Iran, we cannot allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon when they want to destroy us and destroy our ally Israel. So if one of two things is going to happen, either we're going to continue to stop their ability to have nuclear weapons, okay, or they're going to come to a deal that they're not going to they're not going to create nuclear weapons. One of those two things is going to happen.
I'm Dave Rubin, and joining me today is Florida Senator Rick Scott. Senator, somehow, this is the first time we are meeting each other. I'm 5 years into my Florida operation. I feel like I've met everybody here, and yet this is the first time. So I'm going to really have to grill you here because there's a lot of problems in Florida, wink, wink.
Well, first off, I'm glad you're in Florida. When I became governor back in I won back in 2010, more people were leaving Florida than moving in. So I put a lot of effort into rebuilding the economy in Florida. So I'm glad you're here.
Well, not only am I here, but you're happy to know I brought 2 companies, about a dozen employees, all escaped out of Cali, all functional people with jobs who are good humans in their community and all that good stuff. But actually, since you brought up that you were governor and that Florida was not always the way it is now, why don't we talk about that for a little bit? Are you just amazed how strong Florida is right now? I don't want to jinx it, but this state has really come a long way.
Well, so I ran on a campaign. Nobody knew me back in 2010. I ran on a campaign to get people back to work. I'm a kid that, like a lot of Americans, didn't grow up with money. I lived in public housing, never met my dad. And I thought, I was living in Florida and the economy was horrible. You couldn't get a job. And so I ran with the goal that let's rebuild this economy because Florida was going down the path of California at the time. So I said we get 700,000 jobs, and everybody says, oh, you can't get 700,000 jobs because the state had lost 832,000 jobs in 4 years. Actually, we ended up, not government, the private sector added 1.7 million jobs. By the time I left, we had over 300,000 people move into the state a year. So that's the most important thing you can do, I think, for anybody is make them self-sufficient, get them a job.
So what is the magic there? Because we've got a lot of boom here right now. We've got housing boom, we've got a job boom, we've got a tech boom. What's the magic to making that happen? And why do they not do that in places such as New York and Cali?
Well, the biggest thing is think like a business person. Who creates the jobs? Like you're a business person, you create jobs. So why are you in Florida? Well, it might be a better, you can find better employees. There might be less taxes. There might be less fees. Might be easier to get a permit. There might be better schools. There might be safer. So all those things, you put all those things together and you've got a, blockbuster state. So what I did was I said, we're going to reduce taxes. We reduced taxes and fees 100 times. We cut 20% of the regulatory environment. And with because most of this regulation we don't need. And it's not just at the state level. There's local level, county, city, federal, it's all over the place. So we got rid of that. Our universities, we started focusing on getting people a job. So you add all those things together, that's what drives it.
Is there anything that you see glaringly right now that we're not doing here in Florida? I run the numbers all the time on the show about, we're number 1 in higher ed now. We are number 1 in tourism, obviously low taxes. Now we're going to do the property tax thing that was just passed by the state legislature. It'll go to referendum and need 60%, which I think it'll get. We're doing great things on infrastructure. We're getting this influx of people. Is there what are the spaces that you see that we could be doing better or that you'd like to maybe do something different than we're currently doing?
Well, number one, you've got to start talking to companies again. The state has not been doing a lot of economic development. So like I got Northrop Grumman to expand and Lockheed to expand and Hertz to move their corporate office. And the way I did it is I called on them constantly. Probably the best economic person in the state is somebody I saw just the other day in Palm Beach, Kelly Smallridge. And Kelly, I worked with her, and we called on companies, and we said, "Look, we're not from government. We're not going to give you money, but we're going to help you." And so sometimes it was, okay, can you make sure I get the right employees? Sometimes we would give them a break on taxes as long as we got a return. So, and the way that worked when I did it was, I'm a business guy, so I always had to get a return on investment. I felt like a fiduciary for the taxpayer. So I said, look, if you bring 100 jobs or 500 jobs, I can tell you what I'm going to get back in state revenue. I'll give you a cut of that. But I'm only going to do it once you add the jobs. So we did that. So the state needs to do more of that. We've got to, now some things, the federal government's got to work on, and that's not balance our budget has caused interest rates to go up. They're not really high as compared to was when I bought my first house, but they're high as compared to the last 20 years. So we got work on that at the state level.
What do you think? What can the federal government do on that? Because that's one of the main things that,
balance the budget. It's real simple. If we're running $1.9 trillion deficits, and now with the tariff decision by the Supreme Court, that means we'll have less revenue. So that's going to cause interest rates to continue to stay high. I don't think they're coming down anytime soon, because somebody's got to buy it. I mean, let me tell you how bad it is. We've got to refinance, I think, about $10 trillion worth of treasuries in the last year and a half, next year and a half. Somebody's got to buy that. We're have to borrow another couple $1 trillion a year. Somebody's got to buy that. We only have about a $30 trillion economy. So I think that's going to make it hard to see interest rates coming down. But at the state level, do more economic development. We've got to focus on more affordable housing. We've got to continue to focus on making sure our universities and our state colleges and our technical schools graduate people where there's a job at the end. I think we have to work on that. Florida, when I was governor, we went from 80 million tourists a year to 126 million tourists. So we had a 50% increase. It's actually slowed down quite a bit. And part of the reason was that the state cut back on marketing tourism. Actually, in the last 12 months, we've actually lost jobs in Florida, and that's a variety of things. Housing, we do a lot in construction. But part of it is we got to do more economic development. We're going to get there. And, property taxes are high. What I did was, when I was governor, I reduced the millage rate to try to keep it low as property values went up. Now we've got a pretty big property tax crisis. Property insurance, we got to get the cost of that down. The legislature did some things a couple of years ago, but we got to do more there. The way I think about it is, you've got to think about it from a company standpoint and from an individual standpoint. You've got to say, how can we make the company more competitive? And how can we make sure the individual can afford to live here? And it's good for them. Their kids get a great education, things like that.
Well, so far, so good. I would put it that way. That's my bumper sticker on my time here. Let's shift to some of the national stuff. One of your aides who was sitting in before you jumped in there said that you were a moment late because you were at the White House, which was the only excuse I was going to accept. What's going on over at the White House these days?
Well, we're working really hard on the Save America Act, a way to make sure we secure elections. It's pretty basic. You ought to have to show an ID to vote. You ought to have to show that you're a U.S. citizen to register to vote. Mondami said you had to have a couple IDs to be a voluntary snow shoveler in New York, but you don't. He's against having to show you have to have an ID to vote. Yeah. So that's a big thing working on. As you know, the Homeland Security is shut down. That means the TSA agents are not getting paid, Coast Guard's not getting paid, Secret Service is not getting paid, and probably some of the ICE agents are not getting paid, depending on how their job was funded. So we got to get that fixed. So those are, in my opinion, those are the two big things I'm working on right now.
So where are we at with these Republicans who seem to be hedging on SAVE? I guess most notably Mitch McConnell. I just simply do not understand how you could be a Republican and be against this, especially with the radical nature of the Democrats right now. Are you talking to these guys? What is going on over there?
We're putting, Mike Lee, Ron Johnson, I put a lot of effort into this to try to make sure we get this passed and to explain to the public. The key is going to be for both the Republicans that to date have not supported and the Democrats that are not supporting it, which is all of them to date, is to have the public call them, because it's like 83% of Americans want it. something like almost 100% of Republicans, 71% of Democrats, 80-some% of independents. So this is popular. So what I tell people, call every Republican, call every Democrat senator. We even have one independent who votes with the Democrats, Angus King. Call them. Tell them what you believe. This is representative government. And I think if we all do that, we'll get this passed.
So assuming you're not going to get any Democrats, because that's just the nature of where things are at right now. I mean, what's going on with McConnell and these, what is it, 3 or 4 other holdouts? I mean, what is it? Yeah. What is the argument against it? What are you hearing?
Well, no one's come up with an argument that I've heard that makes any sense. No one's explained to me how you could be against making sure our elections are secure. So it's pretty simple. If you're a candidate, you want the election secure. They tried to steal my election for sure in 2018, but in 2014 and 2010 differently. But in 2018, they clearly did. They counted something like 95,000 ballots after election night. We still won. But if you're a candidate, you should want a secure election. And if you're a voter, you don't want your vote diluted. So I'm optimistic that they'll come along. But it's really tied to the public doing it. And by the way, the easiest way to get this is to get 60 votes. If we can't get 60 votes, then we've got to look at how can we do it through either the talking filibuster. Can we find another must-pass bill, there's going to be a FISA extension. There's the budget. There's a variety of other bills. This upcoming, when we open up government, can we attach it to that somehow? So I think we have to look at all the above.
Right, because you would concede that there's no way 60 votes are coming, right?
No, I'm optimistic. I think if the public goes after this, like think about it. How does it look to Democrats when you have to have an ID for a snow shoveler? Or John Ossoff down in Georgia, he said that to come to one of his campaign events, you had to have an ID. To go to the DNC, you have to show an ID. So I don't think it's going to be something that if we stay after this, one of the mistakes up here is people don't stay after something and just constantly push to get it done. I think if we do that, I think we have every reason to believe that we're going to get this done.
If someone makes a gentleman's bet in Florida, what do we bet? What would be a standard Florida gentleman's bet? Because I'm going to guess that not one Democrat, what would it be? A key lime pie?
Key lime pie.
All right. Southwest Florida, key lime pie. We'll go to Naples area. I will bet you a slice of key lime pie. I just don't think I think the Democrats would rather fall on the sword than give Trump or the Republicans any win. So a piece of key lime pie on that.
I love key lime pie. So I'm going to work. I was going to work hard before, but now I have additional incentives.
What else is going on in D.C.? I mean, you go to the White House. Obviously, we're 8 or 9 months now from the midterms. All sort of standard logic would say it's not going to go well for the Republicans. But Trump really, I mean, and the whole country, I think, really need it to go well. Otherwise, we're in a lot of trouble. What do you guys have to do? What do we as citizens have to do to make sure that November isn't a disaster?
I think we have to be clear. In my elections, I was very clear. If you want high taxes, if you want a worse job market, if you want a worse economy, if you don't care about school choice, then you should vote for my opponent because that's what they believe in. We got to be very clear what Republicans stand for. What Republicans stand for is we're going to create the best economy ever. Trump did it before. If you give us the opportunity, we will do it again. We will have the best economy this country has ever had. So that's number one. Number two is we are going to continue to focus on fixing the cost of living that was destroyed under Biden. That means what Trump's already done, we need to say, look at what he's already done on gas prices. And I think there's more opportunities there. But then what are we doing for housing? What are we doing for groceries? What are we doing for all the other costs, insurance, all these things? Now, some of them are state impacted, but we got to be very clear. We're going to focus on how to get your cost of living down. The biggest thing that we can do is balance the budget because that'll drive down interest rates. So I think we've got to do that. We've also got to talk about public safety. Now, part of it is what they do at the state and local level with sheriffs and police departments, but talk about the border. Talk about how we are making your life safer by making sure criminals are not coming into this country. So we've got to do all those. I think it always comes down to these things. Are you going to give me a better job or give me a job? Are you going to make sure my kids get a great education? And are you going to make sure I can live in a safe community and I can afford to live in this community? And then we've got to be singularly focused on those four things and then talk about every day what we did. When I became governor in January 2011, I met a governor who just had finished, and he said, you can't solve a problem people don't believe is a problem. Those four are always a problem. That's number one. Number two, you needed to go tell people what you did, and you need to tell them today, tomorrow, every day going forward.
So speaking of telling people what you did or what you might do, since you just walked out of the White House, I mean, it sounds like the Iran situation could pop off at any moment. Are you guys getting briefings on that in the Senate, or is this just what's going on at the White House and you'll find out when we find out?
Well, we get briefings. We never know as clearly as much as what what the president's doing, unless you're working directly with him. But I think it's pretty clear what's going to happen. We cannot allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon when they want to destroy us and destroy our ally Israel. So if one of two things is going to happen, either we're going to continue to stop their ability to have nuclear weapons, okay, or they're going to come to a deal that they're not going to create nuclear weapons. One of those two things is going to happen. It's actually completely under the control of the Ayatollah. So one of those two things is going to happen. It's just like I talk a lot to the White House about Latin America, and I get a lot of briefs about what's happening in Venezuela, what's happening in Cuba, what's happening because it impacts Florida, not just impacts Florida, but it actually impacts the country. So, but on Iran, I couldn't tell you what's going to happen because it's completely up to the Ayatollah. But this president, he's going to defend us.
Speaking of Latin America, obviously, last day, 24 hours or so, there's this massive cartel fight now happening in Mexico. I don't think the average American understands that these cartels are basically an army within the state of Mexico that is not the Mexican army. Should we just be letting them fight it out at this point? I mean, it sounds like maybe we helped a little bit with the initial, at least intelligence of taking out the cartel leader. Should we just let them fight it out? What responsibility do you think we have, if any?
Well, first off, if you knew my daughters, you know that I tell them all the time, don't ever take a trip to Mexico because of the cartels, it's dangerous. So I think every American needs to understand that if you go to Mexico, it's dangerous. I mean, there's cartels that have a lot of control over what happens in that country. Doesn't mean the Mexican government doesn't want to stop it. Doesn't mean they don't have a strong military, but they have pretty strong cartels. So I think we need to cooperate with the Mexican government and have expectations that if they want our dollar from our consumers, our purchasing dollars, they've got to make their country safe. That means they've got to deal with their own cartels. They've got to make sure our southern border is not unsafe from their side of the border. So I think I don't think we can support them with intelligence and things like that. But I think we should have expectations that if you want to have a relationship with America, you've got to do your part.
Speaking of the border, can you talk a little bit about how Florida has coordinated with the federal government when it's come to ICE and deportations and alligator Alcatraz and all of that stuff? Because, we focus so much on why it doesn't work in places like Minnesota, but there are places like Florida right here. I mean, not too far from my house. They took 20 of these guys that they found in a U-Haul a few months ago, and it was found by local police, and then they coordinated with ICE, and they're all gone. So it can work if you want it to work.
I've said that a lot. We don't have the Minnesota problem in Florida, and the reason is our sheriffs. We have sheriffs in our 67 counties. They work with ICE. The reason is our police chiefs. They work with ICE. So in contrast, where in Minneapolis, if you're illegal and you're a criminal, they're going to let you out. You're going to be turned over to ICE, and you're going to be deported. You're going to be out of this country. If you're a criminal, you're not going to be staying here. So. The big thing is that we work with ICE. The frustrating thing I think for our country is under the Biden administration in particular, they just allowed our southern border to be completely wide open. And what we've all found is our immigration laws don't work. We need to have an immigration program where we know who's going to come into our country. We decide who's going to come into our country. You don't come into our country to become dependent on our country. You come help if we're going to allow you to come into our country. It is our country. It's not your country, right? We have our own borders. We get to pick who comes in here. If you're going to come in here, you're not going to be a dependent, and we're not going to pay for your way of life. You're going to go get a job. If you want to live our dream, you're going to work our dream.
Who is the sanest counterpart on the Senate side for the Democrats? I can only think of one. And if you name someone else besides the guy who I'm writing down right now, I will buy you an entire key lime pie.
Well, you're probably writing down Fetterman. Okay? Right. Now here's the issue with he'll say the right things. He generally doesn't vote with us, though. If the vote matters, he's still voting because Chuck Schumer tells him how to vote.
I didn't say he was great. That is kind of sane.
Yeah. So I'm the chair of the Special Committee on Aging, and the ranking member is Kirsten Gillibrand, and actually she's been on that committee fabulous to work with because we focus on the issues that are important, like we're trying to make sure we stop getting generic drugs made in China and India because they're not good for us. We don't know what the ingredients are, and we're dependent on them. So she's supporting what's called the CLARE Act, which that you will know exactly where your drugs are made. And you should know. Like, Dave, think about this. I think it's 81% of the drugs Americans take are generics. Almost all of them are made in India and China. Almost all the ingredients come out of China. Okay, there's nothing good that comes out of China. Right? There's a lot of wonderful people in China. The government's despicable. If you buy something from China, you have no idea what you're getting, right? Like Chinese garlic, as an example. I got this out of almost all the grocery store chains other than Aldi's in the country. Chinese garlic had 70% of the market. You know how it's made? Human feces and sewer water. It's black when it's finished, and they bleach it white. Everything that comes out of China, every food, every clothing, everything is somehow tainted. And so Americans should know what we put in our body. You should not be taking a generic drug from China. So what this bill would do is just give you the information, right? And you know what you'll do? You will buy American products. Our military, our VA, none of our federal government should be dependent on Chinese drugs. Think about this. If we end up with war with China, which none of us want, you think China will keep shipping drugs to us? Or if they did, would they be safe?
Right.
So Senator Gillibrand has been actually great to work with on that issue. So this will shock you, but with regard to trying to hold the Federal Reserve accountable, who would you think the Democrat would work with me on that?
Are you going to tell me Bernie, maybe? Or
Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warren, yeah. That would be the second one.
Yeah. So she on the Federal Reserve stuff, the Federal Reserve has, when you watch all this extra money they spent on the building, $2.5 billion. Think about it. So, but they don't have an independent inspector general.
Right. There's no real oversight, right? Don't they have an elevator that doesn't work or something? And that's it. Nobody can get down there.
So there's no oversight. So they don't follow general accepted accounting principles. Their balance sheet is worth $1 trillion less than their liabilities, all under Powell. Nobody gets held accountable. They've had insider trading issues. Not one person has been held accountable because they don't have an independent inspector general. Most federal agencies do, but not the Federal Reserve.
Let me ask you one other thing. You slightly hit on this at the beginning, but obviously the Supreme Court has now come down 6-3 against the Trump tariffs. They're using a sort of law from the 70s to kind of circumvent it and put another 10% on. Where do you think this all falls out? I actually don't know what your position was on the tariffs in the first place, so maybe you want to lay that out. But where do you think this all falls out, and can Trump win this fight?
Well, I think the fight should not be about tariffs. The fight should be, how do we get jobs back in this country? We have allowed countries all over the world to take advantage of us. They have restrictive trade policies. They have tariffs. They have permits you can't get, all sorts of things to prevent us from selling our products in their country. I was over in Denmark, Estonia, and Finland right after Trump got reelected, I think in March or April. And all the governments say, well, tell us about Trump, because, he was talking about the tariff stuff. I said, well, here's the deal. Here's what I would do. Number one, I would build a military to defend your own freedom and stop relying on us. We might support you, but we're not your front line. And stop acting like we should be your front line for defense. Number two, I said you need to reduce all your trade barriers and allow us to sell our products in your country just like we allow you to sell in our country. If not, something should happen. Whether we stop you from selling our country, whether we have tariffs, whether we change our permitting, whatever it is, we should not have restrictive. If you want to don't let us sell in your country, you can't sell in ours. Now, the approach Trump has taken is through tariffs, but the reality is he's doing it because Congress has not done its job. Congress is, we put let China go into the World Trade Organization. They've completely lied. Any trade deal with China, they've completely lied. Nobody ever holds them accountable. Now, part of that is the executive branch, part of it's Congress. I mean, if you look at most of the problems, if you think about a lot of the problems Trump's dealing with, take immigration. You know why? Because we have a stupid immigration policy in this country. Why? We've allowed people to steal our jobs and destroy our middle class. So Trump's trying to fix it. Now, the president only has so many levers. He's trying to use the tariff lever. So that's one. But if we did our jobs, we wouldn't have to worry about it.
Right. My own personal philosophy, I don't like the idea of tariffs, but I think that Congress has been so gridlocked that the president has to do things. Sometimes it kind of is what it is. All right. So then my last question to you is, since we have this bet now, so if you get more than 50, if you get one Democrat, that's the bet. You get one Democrat, key lime pie on me. If you get none, key lime pie on you. If you win, where are you getting your key lime pie from? So if I have to get you the key lime pie, where are we going?
So there's I buy my key lime pie from some friends that have a restaurant down in Goodland, but the pie is actually made in Marathon, and I can't think of the name of it. I've also had bets. So what was the one? I've had a lot of bets with the one down in Key West. I can't.
All right, so you're a Keys guy, so Marathon or Key West for your key lime pie. I'll go other coast. If I have to buy you the key lime pie, if you get one Democrat, Timbers on Sanibel Island makes a fine key lime pie.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, Sanibel's coming back. There's still a lot of construction. They're getting there. It's coming. I was with some people last night from Sanibel.
Yeah, actually, why don't we talk about that for just a moment? Because I was there for the last few days, and one of the things that people are concerned about, obviously, is insurance stuff here in Florida. The island is completely built back. It's been very near and dear to my family for a long time. What are you guys doing on the insurance side? And then I'll let you go.
Well, but the property insurance is, it's a state issue. But what has to happen is you've got to one, crack down on all the fraud. Here's the problem with property insurance. The trial bar, which are just doing their job, they're trying to always come up with how they can take care of their client when they have damages, and they try to expand what insurance product covers through the courts. What that means is that it's going to cause your insurance product to go up. So what we have to do, and it's really the legislature in Florida and the governor, what they have to do is almost every year. When I was governor, pretty much every year we had to figure out what do we do to fix something that was getting screwed up through the courts. And so while I was governor, we didn't see significant increase in property insurance rates, but that's what we did. And you just have to do it every year. The Florida legislature passed a good bill, I think 2 years ago, but it's going to take a while.
Well, Senator, I suspect you will be buying me key lime pie. However, if I have to take a trip to the Keys, because you got it right, I will be more than happy to do it.
You can come to Naples and I'll provide you dinner, and then we can share a key lime pie.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
All right. See you, Dave.
If you're looking for thoughtful political conversations that won't raise your blood pressure too much, check out our politics playlist right here. And if you don't want to miss any future videos, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell.